My husband divorced me by text. I'm leaving you and moving to Miami with my secretary. I cried until my boss said, "You deserve better. Take the promotion and the corner office." 6 months later, he showed up begging, but I just smiled and said, I always thought if my marriage ended, I would see it coming. A slow unraveling, late-night fights, cold silences stretching longer each day. Maybe I'd catch him sneaking around, or we'd have a huge blowout that made it clear there was no saving us. Instead, I found out over lunch. It was a Tuesday, just past 1 o'clock, and I was standing in the office break room, watching my leftover pasta spin in the microwave. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I fished it out without thinking, expecting something boring, a reminder for a meeting, maybe a message from my mom. But instead, I saw his name, Jonah, and underneath it, the message that would detonate my life in 7 words. I'm leaving you and moving to Miami with my secretary. For a second, I couldn't move. My hand clenched around the phone, my brain scrambling to process what I was reading. It had to be a mistake, some kind of joke, a text meant for someone else. But no, the words sat there, plain as day. No typo, no confusion, just a blunt, matter-of-fact declaration. My stomach flipped. The microwave beeped behind me, but I didn't move to grab my food. I swallowed, fingers suddenly trembling as I typed back. What? 3 dots appeared, showing that he was typing. I held my breath. Then another message popped up. I'm sorry. I didn't want to do it this way, but it's better for both of us. I hope you understand. Better for both of us. I stared at the words, heat rushing to my face. It felt like my chest had been cracked open, my lungs struggling to work. We'd been married for 10 years. A decade. I met Jonah when I was 22, fresh out of college, wide-eyed and full of dreams. He was charming, ambitious, a little reckless in ways that excited me back then. We got married young, built a life together. I worked while he chased business ventures that never quite took off. I was the responsible one, the one who made sure the bills were paid while he tried, and failed, to make something of himself. I supported him through every setback. Every time he wanted to switch careers. Every time he said, "This next one is it, baby. This is the one that's going to change everything." And now, just like that, he is gone. With his secretary. I felt the burn of tears, but I forced them down. I refused to cry here. Not in the office break room, surrounded by the smell of burnt coffee and microwave leftovers. I locked my phone and shoved it in my pocket, taking a deep breath. My legs felt unsteady as I grabbed my food and walked back to my desk. People were talking around me, oblivious. Phones ringing, keyboards clacking, someone laughing a few rows down. The normalcy of it all made me feel like I was going to be sick. I sat down, trying to focus, trying to breathe. But the words on my screen blurred. My hands curled into fists, my nails pressing into my palms. Hey. A deep voice snapped me out of my trance. I looked up. Julian Carter. My boss. He was watching me, arms crossed. Julian wasn't the kind of man who hovered. He ran this place like a damn shark, efficient, focused, always a step ahead. He wasn't unkind, exactly, but he didn't waste time on small talk. Which meant I must have looked really bad for him to be standing here, studying me with something dangerously close to concern. You okay? He asked. I opened my mouth. Shut it. Because no, I wasn't okay. My husband had just torched our marriage via text message. But how the HLL was I supposed to say that? Yeah, I said. My voice was thin. Just personal stuff. Julian's eyes flickered over my face, sharp and assessing. Then he jerked his head toward his office. Come with me. I hesitated. Now. I swallowed and got up, following him through the maze of desks. My legs still felt weak, but I forced myself to move. Inside his office, he shut the door. I stood there awkwardly as he leaned against his desk, watching me. Talk, he said. I stared at him. What? You look like you just got hit by a truck, he said. So either you tell me what's going on, or I'll assume something's wrong with your work, and we both know you don't want me thinking that. I let out a hollow laugh. Typical Julian. No sugarcoating. I hesitated. But then, before I could stop myself, the words started spilling out. The truck was a text message, I said. From my husband. Saying he's leaving me. For his secretary. Julian's expression didn't change. But something flickered in his eyes. I let out a breath, shaking my head. 10 years. 10 years I gave him. And he ended it like he was canceling a dentist appointment. I swallowed hard. I don't even know what to do right now. I don't even know how to feel right now. Julian was silent for a beat. Then he pushed off the desk and crossed his arms. You deserve better, he said. I huffed out a laugh. That's what people say when they don't know what else to say. I'm not just saying it, Julian said. His voice was steady, firm. I mean it. You've been running this department for years while that a whole ran around playing entrepreneur. And you've been doing it damn well. He tilted his head. I've been meaning to offer you the promotion anyway. The corner office. The raise. It's yours if you want it. I blinked. What? You heard me. For a second, I just stared at him. This wasn't how I expected this conversation to go. I expected the usual platitudes, the awkward that SCKs, let me know if you need time off. But this? You're giving me a promotion, I said slowly, because my husband left me? I'm giving you a promotion, Julian said, because you deserve it. But if you want to think of it as a consolation prize, be my guest. I let out a breath. My head was spinning. I should have said no. Should have told him I wasn't in the right headspace, that my life was in shambles, that I couldn't handle a huge change right now. But then I thought about Jonah, about how I had spent years putting his dreams first, making sacrifices for him, believing in him. And what did I get in return? A text message. Screw that. I lifted my chin. I'll take it. Julian's mouth quirked. Good. Now go home. Take the rest of the day off. And block that bastard's number. I should have gone home. Instead, I went straight to a lawyer. Because Jonah wanted to start over? Fine. But I was about to make sure he regretted every second of it. I didn't go home. I didn't sit around sobbing into a glass of wine. Instead, I found myself standing in the sleek downtown office of Eleanor Graves, one of the most ruthless divorce attorneys in Chicago. Eleanor was a force of nature. Mid-40s, sharp as a cayenne fay, with dark auburn hair always pulled into a tight bun. She was known for tearing men like Jonah apart in court. She skimmed through the marriage documents I had handed her, her manicured nails tapping rhythmically against her desk. Finally, she leaned back in her chair and looked at me with a smile that sent chills down my spine. This is going to be fun, she said. I swallowed. Fun. She nodded toward the papers. Your husband, soon-to-be ex, I should say, is an idiot. He left you for his secretary. That's workplace misconduct. If they were having an affair before he left, that could mean legal trouble for him. And let's not even get into the financials. I frowned. What do you mean? She gave me a look like I had just asked if the sky was blue. You said you supported him for years while he jumped from one failed business to another, right? I nodded. Did he ever make any real money? I almost laughed. God, no. If anything, I was the one covering our expenses. My paycheck kept us afloat. Exactly, Eleanor said, her eyes gleaming. Which means when we go to court, we argue that you were the primary breadwinner. He may have walked away from the marriage, but he sure as HLL isn't walking away from his financial responsibilities. I blinked. Wait, are you saying I could get alimony? Oh, honey, she said with a smirk. You're not just getting alimony. You're getting the house, a chunk of his assets, and possibly even a lawsuit against him and his little secretary if they were involved before the separation. Something inside me shifted. I had spent so long believing Jonah was the ambitious one, the one with big dreams, while I was just there, supporting him, helping him, making sure he had a soft place to land every time he failed. But now, for the first time, I realized I was the one holding everything together, and I was going to take everything from him. I sat up straighter, meeting Eleanor's gaze. What do I need to do? She smiled. Leave that to me. For the next 2 weeks, I didn't respond to Jonah's texts. At first, he was still in his I hope you understand phase, sending messages like, this is for the best. We weren't happy, and you know it. I know this is sudden, but I hope one day you'll see that I did the right thing. But when I ignored those, his tone changed. Are you seriously giving me the silent treatment? That's childish. You can at least be mature about this. We had a life together. And then, when I still didn't respond, are you talking to a lawyer? Because if you try to come after me for money, I swear. Bingo. I smirked at my phone and set it down. Jonah thought he was in control. He thought he could leave me and waltz off into the sunset with his secretary without consequences. He was about to learn otherwise. A few days later, I found myself in the lobby of Jonah's workplace. It wasn't technically his office. He worked under a small real estate firm, always bragging about how he was this close to making partner. I had been here plenty of times before, dropping off forgotten lunches or sitting in the car waiting for him after work. But this time, I wasn't here as his wife. I was here as the woman who was about to make his life HLL. I strode up to the receptionist, smiling politely. Hi, I'm here to see Jonah Mitchell. The receptionist blinked. Oh, She glanced around, clearly uncomfortable. I raised a brow. Something wrong. She hesitated, then leaned in, lowering her voice. It's just, well, I don't know if you know, but he's been out all week. There was, a situation. My lips curled. Oh, what kind of situation? She looked nervous. I probably shouldn't say, but HR got involved. There were some rumors about him and a certain employee being seen together. Management wasn't happy. I almost laughed out loud. Oh, Jonah, you absolute idiot. Instead, I kept my face neutral and nodded. Well, if you see him, tell him his wife stopped by. I turned and walked out, savoring the stunned look on her face. That night, my phone rang. I was curled up on my couch with a glass of wine, feeling lighter than I had in years. I glanced at the screen. Jonah. I debated ignoring it, but I was in too good of a mood. I answered. What do you want? I said coolly. He hesitated. You went to my office? Oh, so you're still employed? I asked, feigning surprise. Last I heard, HR had a little chat with you and your secretary. Jonah exhaled sharply. Jesus, can you be mature about this? I took a sip of my wine. Mature? You broke up with me through a text message, Jonah. Forgive me if I don't feel like taking the high road. There was silence. Then, finally, he muttered, I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I rolled my eyes. Yeah? And yet, here we are. Look, I don't want this to get messy. I laughed. A full, genuine laugh. Messy? Oh, sweetheart, we're way past that. You don't get to decide how this goes anymore. He sighed. I don't want to fight with you, okay? I thought maybe we could be civil. I smiled. You thought wrong. And then I hung up. For the first time in years, I felt powerful. Jonah had spent our entire marriage thinking I was just the woman who picked up the pieces after him. Now, I was the one burning it all down. After that phone call, I knew Jonah was sweating. He didn't know what I was planning, didn't know how deep I was digging, but he could feel it. His texts got shorter, more desperate. We need to talk. Look, I know you're mad, but can we at least settle this like adults? Please, let's not go to court. We can figure something out. Pathetic. He wanted to negotiate now? After humiliating me? After blindsiding me with a text message while I was microwaving my goddamn lunch? No, Jonah had underestimated me. He thought I'd crumble. Thought I'd be too heartbroken to fight back. Big mistake. Because while he was busy playing Office Romeo, I had been meeting with Eleanor Graves, the best divorce lawyer in Chicago. And she did not come to play. 2 months later, Jonah and I faced each other in court. It was the first time I had seen him since he left. And he looked terrible. His hair was unkempt. His expensive suit looked wrinkled, like he had pulled it out of a suitcase. There were dark circles under his eyes. The confident, CCKY man I had once loved? Gone. I, on the other hand, looked immaculate. New haircut, a crisp, fitted blazer, a quiet, knowing smile. I wanted Jonah to look at me and realize he had lost something he would never, ever get back. He had some mediocre lawyer who clearly wasn't prepared for Eleanor. Because within the first 10 minutes, she shredded him. She presented bank records showing how I had financially supported him for years. How I had paid for our home, our car, even his failed businesses. She brought in HR complaints from his workplace, revealing how his little affair with his secretary had nearly cost him his job. And then she delivered the final blow. Your Honor, we are requesting full ownership of the house, a portion of Mr. Mitchell's assets, and a monthly alimony payment to compensate for the financial burden my client carried throughout their marriage. Jonah's head snapped up. Alimony, he choked out. Eleanor didn't even glance at him. Yes, Mr. Mitchell. Since your wife was the primary breadwinner, and you are currently experiencing career instability, we believe it's only fair that she receives support during this transition. Jonah turned to me, eyes wide with panic. You can't be serious, he hissed. I tilted my head, smiling sweetly. Oh, but I am. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked utterly shattered. The judge reviewed the evidence. The decision came swiftly. I got the house. I got a significant financial settlement. And I got alimony for the next 3 years. Jonah? He got a lesson. When we walked out of the courtroom, he grabbed my arm. His touch used to make me feel safe. Now it just made my skin crawl. Why are you doing this? He asked, his voice hoarse. I looked at him. The man I had once loved. The man who had thrown me away like I was nothing. And I smiled. Because I deserved better. Then I pulled my arm away and walked out, without looking back. Life without Jonah. Turns out, it was amazing. I had the corner office at work now. My team respected me. Julian, my boss turned friend, had been right all along. I had spent so long thinking Jonah was the ambitious one, the dreamer. But the truth? I was the one with real power. I redecorated the house, sold all the furniture Jonah and I had picked out together and replaced it with things that felt like me. I traveled, took a solo trip to Italy, drank wine on a balcony overlooking the Amalfi Coast, and for the first time in years, I felt free. Then, one evening, I got a text. From Jonah. I almost laughed. Of course he would come crawling back. I debated ignoring it, but I was curious. So I opened it. I made a mistake. Can we talk? I actually laughed. Out loud. This man. This absolute fool. I could only imagine what had happened. Maybe his new relationship with the secretary had imploded. Maybe she had realized what a loser he was and kicked him out. Maybe, just maybe, he finally realized what he lost. I took a sip of my wine, feeling zero pain, zero regrets. And then, with a smile on my face, I typed back, no, but I wish you the best. Then I blocked his number. And just like that, Jonah Mitchell was nothing but a distant memory. Here's the thing about revenge. It isn't always about destruction. It isn't about screaming, or fighting, or wishing someone harm. Sometimes, the best revenge is just moving on, thriving, becoming so damn happy that the person who hurt you has no choice but to sit there and wonder, what the HLL did I do? And I was thriving. I had the job, the house, the life Jonah never thought I was capable of having without him. And you know what? I was just getting started. Life had never been better. I had the corner office with a view of downtown Chicago, a job I actually enjoyed, and the respect of my team. Turns out, I had spent years believing that Jonah was the ambitious one, the dreamer, the one who was going to make it big. But the truth? I was the one with real power. I was the one who built a stable life. I was the one who had been carrying the weight of our marriage. Jonah was just along for the ride, and when things got too hard, he jumped ship. And now, he was drowning. I had heard through mutual acquaintances that things weren't going well for him. His relationship with his secretary had imploded. Apparently, she hadn't signed up to be his full-time sugar mama when he started struggling financially. Without me to carry him, Jonah was floundering. His career was in shambles. He was renting a tiny apartment in a rundown building, and the alimony payments were crippling him. I should have felt guilty. I didn't. One evening, I was sipping wine on my newly redecorated balcony, enjoying a beautiful sunset, when my phone buzzed. I glanced down. Jonah. I smirked. I knew what this was. He had been silent for months, probably out of pride. But now, reality has caught up with him. He had finally realized what he had lost. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity won. So, I opened the message. I made a mistake. Can we talk? I actually laughed. Out loud. It was so predictable. I could almost picture him sitting in some dimly lit apartment, scrolling through old pictures of us, realizing that I had been the best thing that ever happened to him. Too little. Too damn late. I thought about responding with something sharp, something that would sting. But then I realized I didn't need to. Because I won. I took a sip of my wine, smiled to myself, and typed back, "No, but I wish you the best." Then, I blocked his number. And just like that, Jonah Mitchell was nothing but a distant memory. Here's the thing about revenge. It isn't always about destruction. It isn't about screaming, or fighting, or wishing someone harm. Sometimes, the best revenge is just moving on, thriving, becoming so damn happy that the person who hurt you has no choice but to sit there and wonder, what the HLL did I do? And me? I was thriving. I had the job, the house, the life Jonah never thought I could have without him. And you know what? I was just getting started.